The future of work continues to evolve, and the hours spent on the job may possibly change too. Senator Bernie Sanders recently proposing a bill to cut the work week to 32 hours without cutting pay. He cites 60% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, and that since 1973, weekly wages for the average American worker have actually gone down after adjusting for inflation. He says that tech advancements like AI are already boosting productivity and companies' bottom lines as well. So workers should reap the benefits too. Let's bring in Yahoo Finance's Rachelle Akuffo to break it down for us. Hey, Rachelle.
Hey, Brad, good to see you. So as we're talking about here, this is the 32-hour work week act that Senator Sanders is proposing. Now, this would bring the work week down essentially from 40 hours to 32 hours, but it's not as straightforward as just chopping off a day. This is something that would transition over the period of 4 years, and it would be by lowering the threshold for overtime compensation for non-exempt employees. It would also require overtime pay at time and a half for work days longer than the traditional 8 hours, and at double a worker's regular pay for work days longer than 12 hours. It would also protect workers' pay and benefits to ensure that a reduction in the work week does not cause a loss in pay. So certainly some juggling that they'll have to do here. But obviously, this is something that isn't completely new. The US wouldn't be the first country to try and attempt this, Brad.
Right. So other countries have already been experimenting with this and versions of this. Or, I mean, if you go to Spain, they essentially just take a massive break in the middle of the day anyway. But I digress. Could the US realistically follow suit here?
Well, as you mentioned there's different ways of experimenting with this version. For example, some of the countries that Senator Sanders cited, France has a 35-hour work week. Now, that's 7 hours a day for 5 days, but they are also exploring a 32-hour work week. You have countries like Norway and Denmark that have a 37.5-hour work week with a 30-minute break. But you also have individual companies, and not just the ones that you see on the screen here, but even within the US, Canada, Britain, Spain, Portugal, and others, they're also piloting studies here. And a global study from Boston College showed that some of these participating companies saw increased productivity, reduced worker burnout, lower childcare costs, and of course less carbon emissions. You figure less traveling, you need less childcare if you're also able to have a bit more flexibility. It is worth keeping in mind, though, that it is easier for certain industries to replicate this success and adjust than others. Of course, as we learned from the COVID pandemic, some people did still have to work in person, especially in some of these hands-on industries. But one of the criticisms, including from the GOP Senator Bill Cassidy, is that smaller businesses are already struggling to find the skilled workers that they need in the US. So to have an even shorter work week with the same pay would hit some of their already razor-thin margins, Brad.
So why now? I wonder how this is going to move forward, but also just the timing of it.
It's true. I mean, look, when you look at every time that we talk about earnings, we talk about how some of these companies are really just soaring. But Sanders noted that he's highlighting this is not the same workforce that we were in back in the 1940s when the Fair Labor Act established the 40-hour work week. In fact, the St. Louis Fed shows that business productivity is actually up 400% since then. And the Economic Policy Institute found that as of 2021, CEOs were paid about 400 times more than the typical worker. And as we mentioned, advancements in AI and other tech should mean that workers are able to stay even more productive while reducing hours. Now, interestingly, this is supported by several unions, including the United Auto Workers. Of course, we continue to see that union push still in 2024. But still going to be a hard sell in Congress, especially in an election year. And of course, persistent inflation. People still feeling the bite, especially small businesses as well. So you are more likely to see individual companies perhaps taking the lead here, depending on how tight the job market remains. So perhaps in your next company meeting, if someone asks if there are any questions, maybe throw the idea of a 32-hour work week out there. But of course, have those productivity numbers out there to back it up as well, Brad.
Yeah, just toss it on the table, run away, and just see what you come back to on the conversation on the other side. Maybe it will be productive. Rachelle, thanks so much. We appreciate it.